When I open myself to compassion for children, animals, etc., I suffer. How do I open myself to compassion without suffering? Most of us think about two options of how to live. One way is the closed way, the way that I am separate from the world. We then embark on a spiritual path, or we feel like something is missing in our lives, that we're not really living in the truest experience of who we are. And so we decide, I'm going to open myself. I'm going to open myself to love, to compassion, to connection, to oneness. And when we do that, the first thing that hits us is pain. Oh my God, all the suffering, the hunger, the thirst, the homelessness, the violence, the deprivation. And a lot of us feel really stuck between these two worlds. Either I protect myself in this illusory bubble that keeps me separate from the world, separate therefore from my truth of connection and oneness, but at least keeps me theoretically safe from suffering. Or I open myself to the truth and I am assailed by pain. And the dilemma is that neither of them is really true. Opening ourselves to compassion is the beginning of the truth. But here's what's interesting. When we open ourselves to compassion, to oneness, to connection, it's not only to people's pain. There's a lot of joy in the world. Yes, there's death, and yes, there's life. And yes, there's horrendous acts of nature. There's fire, there's earthquake, there's floods. And yes, there's blossoming of flowers. There's trees giving fruit. There's sunrises and sunsets and beautiful formation of birds flying together over the banks of the Ganga water as we sit on the arti, the banks of Ganga for the arti. And yes, there's lack. And yes, there's abundance. And interestingly, when we open ourselves to compassion, it seems to be this magnetic pull only toward the negative. But on a spiritual level, when we talk about openness and compassion and connection, it's not only to death and sickness and deprivation and sadness and suffering and violence. It's also to joy and health and love and life and creation. And if we are experiencing compassion only for those who are suffering, then we haven't really opened ourselves to the fullness and the truth of all of creation. All we've done is taken our drama, our story, and have carried it from one way of living it into a new way of living it. That instead of perhaps it being suffering about our own lives, now it's suffering about other people's lives. Instead of losing sleep because we are a victim of something, now we get to lose sleep because other people are victims of something. But it's the same box. It's the same drama. It's the same slice of a fullness of reality. And that doesn't mean it's not there. It is there. And yes, compassion includes openness to the night as well as the day, to death as well as to life. But it also includes the day as well as the night. It includes the life as well as the death. It includes the joy as well as the suffering. And so on our path of opening to compassion, it's important to put into practice opening to those in health as well as those in sickness. Opening to those in joy as well as those in sorrow. One of my personal favorite meditations is when we're in our sacred arti, which for me personally, I mean for so many, but I experience it in me, is such a time of just divine ecstasy. Just an experience through no merit of yourself, through no merit of your own sadhana, nothing. We get carried into a divine experience through grace. And so for me, it's this extraordinary time of ecstasy and connection. However, across the river from us and downriver a little ways is the cremation ground for Rishikesh. And according to Hindu tradition, cremations have to take place prior to sunset. They have to begin prior to sunset. You don't start a cremation late in the night. And so a lot of them are still burning when the arti is on, because they've been begun just in time before the sunset, but a cremation takes several hours. And I remember the first time I noticed it, and I was shocked, and I was immediately horrified, because I thought, oh my God, what must it feel like to be standing there over the funeral pyre of a loved one, watching these people across the river have the audacity to celebrate, to sing and to dance and to be joyful. I mean, when we are mourning, when we've lost a loved one, it's like, how dare the sun rise and shine? How dare these people sing and dance and celebrate my loved one has just died. Our world has stopped, and we sort of expect that the natural world should stop as well. And I was horrified, and I felt very guilty at having the audacity to be singing and celebrating and joyful while these people were mourning. And then I realized that actually one of the beautiful aspects of the Indian tradition is that there isn't these lines and these boxes between life and death, between joy and sorrow. That it's all part of this oneness of experience. And from that moment on, as I'm in the arti, if I look out and I see a cremation going on, normally I keep my eyes closed in the arti, just in ecstasy. But if I notice that there's a cremation, I will purposely keep my eyes open and try to keep them fixed on that funeral pyre. And try in that moment to see whether in my consciousness, it's not about me celebrating in joy over here and experiencing sympathy for those who are over there, but can I actually be in my meditation the one who is standing there burning their loved ones? And then you can take it a step deeper. Can I also be the one in the funeral pyre? Can my meditation go so deep that without losing, I'm not losing the me who's here in the arti. So it's not letting go of the joy and the celebration and the ecstasy, but it's, can my consciousness expand enough? Can I create enough space in my awareness of self to be celebrating over here, in ecstasy over here, and mourning over there, and burning over there? Because that experience of being the one who is celebrating in life, in joy, in ecstasy, and the one who is perished and burning, and the one who is mourning the death and the burning. They are all parts of exactly the same, call it a spectrum, call it an ocean, call it a field. Whatever term we use, it doesn't matter, but they're all part of the same simultaneous reality of truth. And so when we open ourselves to compassion, it's not, I leave my place over here in celebration and I bring myself exclusively into the place over there mourning. That's not compassion. That's just a different false identification. Over here I was identifying only as the one in joy. Now I'm identifying only as the one suffering. Both are false. Can I open myself to the lack of separation between me and the one who is suffering, while I also open myself up to the lack of separation between me and the one who is celebrating? Because as I am one with the mourner, as I am one with the person on the funeral pyre, so I am one with my guru, through whose grace the arti is taking place, through whose grace the ecstasy is happening, who's carrying us into that state of ecstasy. So I am one with the birds flying overhead in this glorious formation of joy. So I am one with the sweet dog who sometimes walks into the middle of the arti, drawn to the middle of a crowd, unfazed, unworried, unanxious, and likes to just lie down and take a nap in the middle of the crowd of singing and dancing people. And so I am one with the children begging for money to be able to eat upriver. And so I am one with all of the abundance. And that's what the actual place that we're looking to go is. So yes, opening yourself to compassion includes suffering. There's no way around that. And that's okay, because remember, the ultimate goal of our life is not to avoid suffering. That's not the game we were put here to play. It's not about how untouched can you make it through the world, Because of course the only way to avoid suffering is to avoid feeling. If you feel, you'll suffer. If you don't suffer, you're not feeling. If you can walk by starving children, by quadriplegic lepers, by homeless people, by polluted rivers, by trees that are being cut down, and not suffer, you're not feeling. But also, if you can walk by flowers that are blooming, and the beautiful flowing waters of the river, and the beautiful trees that are growing, and the joyful laughter of children splashing in the water, and the enlightenment of the old woman who sits on the riverbank turning the beads of her mala in an ecstasy all her own. If you're not one with that, you're also not feeling. And so when we open ourselves to the fullness, rather than just trading a personal drama for a global drama. And here's the beautiful aspect of that is by allowing ourselves to be open also to the fullness of the joy and the peace and the abundance, it enables us to be able to stay open to the suffering without needing to shut ourselves down because we can't take it. Because if you only open yourself up to suffering, you won't be able to take it for very long. And then you're not going to be able to be an agent of transformation, a tool of light, a tool of healing, a tool of bringing healing to the suffering. If I'm overwhelmed by the suffering such that I can't get out of bed, such that I need to drown my pain in alcohol or drugs or chocolate cake or Facebook, or such that I need to just shut myself off from it, then I've closed myself to both the possibility of my own awakening and also the possibility of actually being able to effect change in the world I live in. And those are the two highest callings that we have. Our own awakening, our own enlightenment, and through that, to bring light to the world. So open yourself up, but open fully. And when the suffering starts to feel too much, go sit in a meadow of wildflowers and be open to that. Watch the sunset, be open to that. Spend half a day in a kindergarten, be open to that. Such that your inner experience becomes an honest and true experience of the fullness of the world we live in.